Hello?
Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention?
Welcome aboard Frank's Magic Bus. For the next 2 hours, Frank Welch takes you on a musical journey with some of the best deep tracks of classic rock history. Now, without further ado, Frank Welch.
Right now, we're going to stop down and talk to Carl Palmer. He was the drummer of Emerson, Lake and Palmer, the great progressive rock, art rock, synthesizer rock band of the very early 1970s. Also was in Asia later on, too. We will talk to him about the heyday of Emerson, Lake and Palmer back in the early 70s when he would fill up stadiums here in the USA. First, though, we catch up with Carl Palmer about what he's been doing in recent years, playing kind of a jazz fusion thing, progressive jazzy things, intellectual music, he calls it, with really no vocalist at all. We talked to him about that. So folks heading to one of your shows, they can expect to hear Emerson, Lake and Palmer original songs, some of them, but no vocals. They need to be ready for just good instrumentation, right?
Basically, I thought this was a more honest way to go about things. I really didn't want to have another vocalist singing Greg Lake's lyrics or a keyboard player playing Keith Emerson's keyboard lines. I thought this was a chance to do something which was different. It's a niche market. It's something that isn't out there. I don't really see the need for vocals with what I'm doing. It's the musicality and the musical expression, which is obviously, extremely important. I'm playing what I would consider to be the modern jazz of today, as it were. I use that word loosely, but that's what it is. It's intellectual music, and they're fine musicians that I've got. They're very, very young, and I think that using a vocalist would not have been true to the cause, and having a keyboard player there, I would have put myself in a situation where I would have definitely been compared, and that's really not what it's all about. It sounds very young, it's very raw, it's extremely sophisticated at times, but on the other hand, it has a new kind of energy which appeals to a lot of young people, believe it or not, especially here in Europe. But we'll have to see how the cookie crumbles, as they say in America.
I think you might be right about that because your kind of music that you're talking about pretty much stands alone. You really don't need vocals if it's done right. The synthesizer parts on a lot of the old vintage Emerson, Lake and Palmer tunes, now how do you handle that in the show?
Well, it was very difficult, to tell you the truth, because I had to get together with a specialist, a guitar player, who specializes in transposing orchestral parts and keyboard parts to guitar. So what I did, once I had selected X amount of material I wanted to play, I sat with this guy for approximately 2 months, going through the various pieces of Emerson, Lake and Palmer, classical adaptations that I wanted to redo, original pieces by Emerson, Lake and Palmer that I was considering redoing. And I just tried to work out with him what lines would work, what would fit. And obviously some things didn't work, some things did, and it just went on from there. And now I'm looking at a repertoire of approximately 14, 15 pieces.
And as we continue our conversation with Carl Palmer of Emerson, Lake and Palmer on Frank's Magic Bus, I reminisced a little with Carl about the heyday of Emerson, Lake and Palmer back in the early 70s when they would sell out tours in the USA, but huge venues. And when I questioned whether the music would have been fitting for a big open-air stadium, I might have poked a sensitive spot, or I might have ruffled his feathers a little bit. Carl, I kind of collected Rolling Stone magazines back in the 1970s. I was looking through one the other day when I knew I'd be talking to you. In the mid-70s, they had a big feature story in Rolling Stone, about 3 or 4 pages long, with pictures of your crew breaking down the equipment in something, I want to say, giant stadium. You guys actually played stadiums, right? Emerson, Lake and Palmer. And how did that music out in the open air of a football stadium translate?
I think it translated okay. I believe everybody went home happy. I don't recall having, hearing too many sort of complaints at all. Obviously, I'm not playing in those type of places today. I'm playing in small art theatres and small theatres in general, So, it's completely different for me now. Then, obviously, that was a fantastic time, and I believe the music transmitted and came across and equally as good as what it does today for the bands out there playing in those places.